0.1% double dose. That is a 0.5% increase in 24 hours on double dose. That means more Queenslanders who are fully vaccinated, which is fantastic, and all of those fully vaccinated people will be able to enter all of those venues that are going to be mandatory vaccination businesses from next Friday the 17th. We've got 4,097 people in home quarantine currently. The good news is, if you can call this good news, is that the genomic sequencing we've got back so far from these positive cases on the Gold Coast are Delta. Let's not treat Delta like it's not a big deal. Delta is highly contagious and it can cause serious illness and death. So please, just because it's not Omicron doesn't mean it's not serious. We want people to come out and get tested. I just want to remind everyone, we are getting so close to Christmas Day and big family gatherings, Christmas, Boxing Day, and of course New Year's Eve. And you do not want to be going to these big gatherings with friends and families, elderly loved ones, vulnerable family members, if you have symptoms and you are unwell. So please, if you are unwell, don't ignore those symptoms. Come out now and find out if you have COVID, because it is possible. We have more and more people moving around the state, and from Monday we are going to have thousands and thousands of people flocking from hotspots into Queensland. Yes, they're fully vaccinated, but they can bring the virus still, and if you aren't vaccinated, make you very unwell. So please come forward and get tested. Now I want to report we still have the Moree LGA as a restricted area. Now we have seen still quite a large number of cases in the last fortnight in Moree, but we do accept that there's surrounding towns that we believe we can open up more. So the townships and surrounds of the postcode 2400, 2405, 2406 and 2409. So these are Taluna, Greya, Boomy, Mungandai, Tumalay and Bogabilla. These will be townships and surrounds that come 1 a.m. Monday morning will be bound by the same normal border zone that everyone else will be moving to, and not bound by the restricted Moree LGA. We understand it's important to make sure that people living so close to the border and heavily reliant on food and essential services, and also for work, that they should be able to move back and forth. Can I say that only relates to fully vaccinated, not unvaccinated people. Now, businesses have been wanting to know, when we open up and start seeing cases in Queensland, what does that mean for them when they become an exposure site? We know businesses have done it really tough over the last 2 years. We know staff have done it really tough, having to quarantine for 14 days at a time when they become close contacts. We can announce today that from 1 January that we will be changing the quarantine arrangements for people who are fully vaccinated and deemed close contacts. Now we will be putting out guidance materials for business so they can get a better idea of what is a close and a casual contact within the business, to know whether people are likely to need to quarantine or not. But the quarantine arrangements will be, if you are a close contact and you are vaccinated, from 1 January you will only need to quarantine for 7 days, and get a test on day 5, and when you get that negative test after day 7 you'll be able to be released. From day 8 to 14 there will be requirements for you, so we want you to wear masks everywhere you are outdoors, and you are required to avoid high risk settings. So when you are still in that day 8 to 14 period as a close contact, we don't want you going into hospitals, aged care facilities, correctional facilities, youth detention centres and the like, and disability facilities. We know there is still a risk. There is still a risk from day 8 to 14, but we know that risk is reduced when you are fully vaccinated. There is also changes in relation to people who are household contacts to close contacts. as to what will be required. If you are vaccinated household contact of a close contact, you do not need to quarantine, but you will need to get tested on day 1 and day 5. But if you are unvaccinated and a household contact and you're not able to separate from that contact in a household, you will need to do the same 7-day quarantines and comply with the same requirements for days 8 to 14. For unvaccinated close contacts, the rules remain the same. From 1 January, those people will need to continue to quarantine for 14 days, immediately get tested, and then again on day 5 and day 12. Casual contacts from 1 January will simply need to immediately get tested and quarantine until they get with their result. If they get a negative result, they are then encouraged to wear a mask for the 14-day period. It's not mandatory, but they are encouraged to wear that mask. We hope this gives a lot of guidance for businesses. The guidance material, again, will help them based on the national guidelines to understand who is a close contact, the amount of exposure that person's had. Is it someone who works in an office and doesn't have contact with the rest of the staff? Is it someone who has fleeting contacts, a patron who's come in and got takeaway and gone again? Or is it a staff member who's been working there all day, and what other staff are exposed? So this guidance material will help them, but it also gives businesses a reassurance that when we start getting cases, a lot more cases in the new year, that their staff who are fully vaccinated will be quarantining for shorter periods of time. And we know that with staff shortages, particularly in the hospitality sector, this is really going to be beneficial for them. I also want to say that when it comes to critical infrastructure and services, we will be working hand in hand, as we have for the last 20 months, with those essential services, such as our power stations, our smelters, our refineries, our mines, that if there is a positive case, we will work with them to see if the close contacts can isolate, if they can work from home. If they can't, we will work with them to see how we can support them in still having those contacts go to work, but reducing the risk in the community and others in that workplace. We know that we have to keep these essential infrastructure and services operating. We're very pleased to be able to prepare this material. Why 1 January? We can't do this all at once. We have done such a great job for almost 2 years now of keeping this virus at bay. Now we are accepting that we are going to have cases, many hundreds, if not thousands, over the next 12 months in Queensland. We have to do it sensibly and responsibly. That's the plan we have laid out. 1 January allows us a little bit of time to see what happens from Monday, how many cases we get, how many people are needing to be hospitalised, whether any of those people are needing to go into ICU, but it also allows us a couple of more weeks to see what international evidence we can find out about Omicron, because we still don't know enough, and we can expect that Omicron is also going to come to our community over the next coming weeks and months. I'll hand over now also to Dr. Aitken just to talk about the most recent cases. The last thing I'd say is cleaning. We know that the businesses are assuming that when they are told they're an exposure site, they must do a deep clean. We can advise from today, we do not require a deep clean. Businesses will only need to do a normal clean. So if it's a restaurant, they've just found out, or a cafe, they've just found out they're an exposure site, they may stay closed for lunch so they can do a cleaning of the tables and chairs and a good wipe down of the facility and open up for dinner again. It doesn't need to be an expensive, lengthy, deep clean anymore, because we know more about Delta and we know that it's much more likely to be transmitted through aerosols as opposed to what we call fomites, touching surfaces. So I'll now hand over to Dr. Aitken, and then of course Minister Farmer, who's here with me today, Small Business Minister, talking about what this means for small business and the support materials. Thank you, Dr. Aitken.
Thanks, Minister. And as you've heard, one new case today, and that's the confirmed case that we talked about yesterday as a person of interest. The important part of this case is that this person has used the check-in app, and that's how we know they've been to Bunnings. That's a really important thing, and incredibly thankful to that woman for doing that. It's allowed us to go through her travel movements, her epidemiological links, and start to consider whether her exposure is linked to the previous cluster of 4. We don't know yet. That is just one part of her movements, and it's still possible she may have been exposed in multiple other areas that she has been. The genomics will tell us the answer. We're expediting that. We should have that answer back either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. But enormous thanks to her, because that's so important for everybody to use the check-in app. So as we get cases, we can start to work out where the links are, where people have been, where exposure might have been. The other important thing is that our vaccination rate is going up. 0.5% increase in our second dose is wonderful. It's never too late to get vaccinated. And the really important thing with vaccination is that vaccination stops people getting severe illness. I can't emphasise that enough. I would love, it won't be me, because John Gerard starts on Monday, and I congratulate John, and I'm really looking forward to working with him. I think he'll be a wonderful Chief Health Officer. But it would be lovely for anybody to stand here and say, look, we've had 1,000 new cases of COVID. They are all fully vaccinated and they all have mild illness. And that's what we hope to see. What we don't want to see is to say we've had 1,000 cases of COVID and none of them are vaccinated, and of that we've now got 200 people in hospital, we've got 50 in ICU, we've had deaths. We don't want that. I would ask all Queenslanders to come forward and get vaccinated, because being vaccinated means you're likely to have mild disease, not severe disease. It protects you, it protects your community, it protects our hospitals, and that's the pathway to living with COVID, because we're living with COVID as a mild disease. Thank you, and remember, if you haven't been, please get vaccinated.
Thank you. We've known for a long time now that COVID will be coming to Queensland. We're seeing the cases on the Gold Coast, and that's before the borders have even opened. And COVID-19 will be coming to our pubs and our clubs and our hotels and our cafes and bars. And today's announcement gives clarity to the owners of those businesses about what to do to manage COVID-19 in the workplace. We believe that it strikes a right balance between managing risk and minimising disruption. And of course, it's your vaccination status that determines what your options are if you have been in close contact with someone who is COVID positive. We know that it will be a new normal for these businesses after this week. Many of these businesses have borne the brunt of the COVID restrictions over the last 2 years, and I really want to thank them for the way they've just kept on going. They've put their shoulders to the grindstone and they've done the right thing to protect their patrons and their staff and their local communities. But we also know that they need support to actually go through these quite different and challenging times, which is why we have developed a package of materials, and I cannot stress enough, I have businesses talking to me from right across Queensland who just want to do the right thing. And we want to get the message out that we have got a package of materials to support businesses just to know how to do the right thing. We encourage them to download the signage that they can put on the front of their businesses, which makes it really clear with the big green tick whether you require people to be vaccinated if they work in or enter those premises. We have a range of questions and answers which will be updated as of today with this new information about how to manage your workplace if a COVID positive person has been there. We have a short online course which has already been accessed by over 1,000 businesses, which will take businesses through how to manage the new vaccination mandates, how to de-escalate if aggressive customers come into your business, and it will be updated early through this week to make sure that it also reflects today's announcement and how you actually make those decisions. And we encourage all businesses to go to the Business Queensland website to get this information. We are here to support small businesses through this. Queensland Health will help them with any questions at all that they have about how to manage their staff or their business, how to do the cleaning. Business Queensland is there to help businesses make those decisions and interpret any of these requirements. We want people to know there is no such thing as a silly question. Please talk to us about what you need, and we are there to help you through.
Health Minister, in all due respect, some 40 hours out from the border open, this is absurd. How can businesses survive, Minister? Let's use Caption Street as an example. If somebody within the Caption Street hotel becomes infectious, all that staff then become contacts.
That's not correct.
But
That's not correct, Peter. You haven't even, Peter.
It's a large amount, Minister, of that, a large amount of staff, and then they have to close their doors, and then businesses have to close again.
Well, can we be clear? We have always said that there will need to be some restrictions. The Doherty modelling, the international guidance on all of this is that there still has to be testing, tracing, isolating and quarantining. So we never said that there would be no quarantining. There has to be. We've just seen New South Wales lock down an entire backpacker hostel. So there are still restrictions being put in place in Victoria, New South Wales and the ACT as well. What this does is give more clarity and support to businesses to help them stay open. We don't want businesses, and we don't believe that businesses should need to shut down with these rules. Now, there'll be staff from time to time that may need to go into some quarantine, but we believe the guidance that we're giving now, the guidance material of what is a casual contact versus a close contact, means that less people will need to quarantine, and those people who do quarantine will quarantine for shorter periods of time, meaning businesses can get their staff back online quicker, assuming those staff are vaccinated. So that's all helpful for business, but we also need to slow down the virus as well.
But we got vaccinated. That's why we're slowing the virus down by getting vaccinated. But can you see how businesses, a small cafe, they then will, if it's only a small 5 or 6 staff, and let's be honest, they will become close contacts because they all talk in kitchens or in that setting, will then have to close its business. Businesses are better off now than they are with the borders open because they now face the threat of closing their doors for 7 days.
Well, businesses have been asking us to open the borders.
But
We always
these restrictions were going to apply.
Well,
This is 40 hours out.
that's not correct. What we are announcing today is less restrictions than what apply right now. So we are not imposing new restrictions on businesses. We are reducing the restrictions on businesses going forward as cases start arising. Why? Because we want to see businesses' doors stay open, and we recognise that Queenslanders have done the right thing and got vaccinated, and we know from the evidence now that there is a lesser risk if we allow people who are fully vaccinated to come out of quarantine after 7 days. So this is improving the current situation for businesses. It's not putting new restrictions in place for businesses, but the virus is coming, and the worst thing that can happen for businesses is if we allow the virus to spread very quickly, that people get seriously ill, and we end up with more restrictions than that. So this is a sensible way forward to make sure that when all those cases come, it's happening in a gradual way, and it's recognising that unvaccinated people are much more likely to end up seriously ill and also be spreading it in the community.
Can you guarantee those guidelines won't change depending on what happens with Omicron? Except that you're still waiting to see roughly when they are the rules?
We are very confident these rules will put us in good stead from 1 January. That's why we're announcing them today, to give businesses notice. But we just, we've said 1 January because we just want to keep a close eye on everything that's happening. But we are very confident. We said we'd open on the 17th of December or sooner. We're doing it. So we have stood by our commitments throughout this plan, and will continue to do so.
If that's the case, then why weren't those rules ready to go when the border does open on Monday?
Because we still have had to look at what's happened since we have allowed home quarantine. We've allowed more people coming into hotel quarantine. We've also seen those cases coming in from South Australia. We've also been able to stop and just have a look at South Australia. South Australia is about 2 to 3 weeks ahead of us. They opened up to domestic arrivals from New South Wales and Victoria about 2 to 3 weeks ago, and we've been able to observe them, see how they're managing it, learn from them, and in fact what we are announcing today, we have modelled off South Australia's rules. So it's working well for them. We are confident it can work well for us. It creates alignment for those states who haven't had major outbreak, and we're very comfortable that we think this is the right mix, but we can't do it all on Monday. We can't lift it all on Monday.
You see that by this time next week that you've got to say there's going to be dozens of businesses that are closed, because you're saying that
Not at all.
Dr. Aikens and Dr. Young are saying COVID is coming. We know that. We're going to get a waiver. There's 500
We are not closing businesses. There are many, many exposure sites on the website right now, and those businesses are not closed.
Okay, well, I get that, but there's 580 cases in New South Wales today. Tens of thousands of people will be here on Monday morning. Give it a week. They're going to go to cafes, they're going to go to pubs, they're going to go to chemists, everything. And then all of a sudden, if these little businesses that only have a small amount of staff, or businesses that rely on a large amount of staff, are going to lose a chunk of staff because they will become close contacts of people that have COVID. And that means
But just let's remember that from next Friday, the only people walking into many of those businesses are fully vaccinated patrons. That's why we did that. You know, these are tough decisions, but we have mandated these social measures for pubs and clubs and nightclubs and museums and libraries and all of these venues. Why? Because we understand they're high risk, but we also understand by doing this, it reduces the risk of large outbreaks in businesses. So it keeps businesses' doors open, and that is our priority. We need to keep our economy open. We want to keep going. We want to open up more, not have a yo-yo of open and close. And that's why we believe this is the best measure going forward. It's sensible. It's modelled on the South Australia model. That's about 2 to 3 weeks ahead of us. And it's also what we understand and when we are expecting large number of cases.
Minister Josh Frydenberg has said this morning that states need to keep calm. Will Queensland keep calm and stick to the reopening plan despite the spread of the Omicron variant?
Well, we have so far. We've followed our plan. Today we're standing up and we are announcing further reduction in restrictions on people quarantining. That will help business. More clarity as to who is a casual and close contact. So the guidelines nationally is a close contact, someone who's had 15 minutes or more exposure or in a confined space. So that will help reduce the number of people who would be classified as a close contact. But when the federal government tells us as states to stay calm, I find that a little bit rich when it is federal members and federal senators that are acting hysterically out there in the community, holding rallies. Our local federal member here, Luke Howard, holding a forum, talking about segregation, talking about opposing mandatory vaccinations. We are only standing here today at 80% double dose because of those mandatory vaccinations. They have driven up our vaccination rates, and it is completely irresponsible for those members to do that. For David Crisafulli to now take a back step and say, I'm not going to commit to supporting mandatory vaccination or not because I don't want to undermine vaccine rollout. Well, sorry, if you're not backing it in, then you are undermining the vaccine rollout, and that is pretty weak of the leader of the opposition here in Queensland. So Josh Frydenberg needs to have a good talk to his LNP colleagues.
In terms of the border reopening, are police and backers are ready for Monday? Is confidence going to go off without a hitch?
Hopefully. Look, we've said, and the police commissioner has said, everyone expect delays at the borders. So please be patient. If you don't need to be on that road crossing at 1 a.m. in the morning, just wait a day or so. Don't be on the road for peak time, when people are trying to get to work. Just try to be sensible. We don't want accidents. We want people to be patient. Can I say now we expect people to be respectful. Our police on the borders have done an amazing job, and what I don't want to hear on Monday is abuse and poor behaviour by these people trying to cross. Please be patient. You know it's happening. You know there's going to be a lot of vehicles. Please just stage your crossing and think about how long those lines are going to be and when you want to cross. But we hope it goes smoothly. The police are working really tirelessly to make sure they manage particularly those road crossings right across the border.
Minister, I know that you weren't there on the day, but the question needs to be asked. It obviously comes from the front page of News Corp today. Why didn't the government, you've got people working for you, the Premier's got plenty of people in office, why weren't there checks done or substantial checks done? And can you obviously understand for the people involved in the case it's been very difficult for them?
sure. Look, obviously I'm not going to talk about a case before the courts, but I will say this. I mean, the Premier, the Minister was not involved in the selecting of this person and didn't make these arrangements. We don't do a police check on everyone who walks into Parliament House, nor would people expect us to do that. It is unfortunate, and I'm not going to prejudge anything in relation to those proceedings before the courts because I know they're not final. But certainly this was not done deliberately. No one was aware, that certainly the Premier and the Minister were not aware of these charges when this individual was invited to participate in this event. And I want to say this, that no matter what about that one individual, that should not take away about what the event was about. Minister Furner has been tireless in his campaigning around domestic and family violence. This was a fundraising event where I understand he's raised around $46,000 for young people in refuges around domestic and family violence. And I don't want his hard work and the great work of everyone who goes out there and lifts awareness about DV to be overshadowed by this one individual who is currently before the courts.
Did it concern you?
Oh, well, I'd say hindsight's a wonderful thing, but you can't look at hindsight and go, oh, well, why did we let him? They didn't know. They didn't know that there were charges. They didn't know. The Premier doesn't do a Google search on everyone that's attending an event. We as ministers and members of Parliament see thousands of people. They come up to us on the street. They come up to us in Parliament. They say, can we get a photo with you? We don't stop and do a police check on all of these people. We didn't organise this event. We weren't aware of those charges. And obviously, if we had been, the individual wouldn't have been involved.
With our mass vaccine hubs, we've seen videos over the past few weeks that they're quite quiet now. Obviously, a lot of people are vaccinated, and that's good that they're quiet and people are going to their GPs and their community pharmacies. Surely, though, we'll need those nurses and health staff back in our hospitals.
We will.
Are you looking at closing down mass vax hubs?
So we've got some of our vaccination centres are winding up before Christmas. So those, because what we know is that we've had many more people coming through when we did schools and Bunnings and all of these other in the community sites. So certainly early on, those big vaccination centres helped us a lot, but there's less demand for them and more of us moving a bit more into the community. So instead of those big hubs this weekend, for example, we've got pop-up clinics at shopping centres and different festivals all over the place. So we'll wind down. I want the health workers back in our hospitals. We need them back in the hospitals, but we also need to make sure that we've got capacity in the new year for the 5 to 11s. Our priority is people going to their GPs or to their pharmacies for their children getting vaccinated, but we also do need to make sure that we can get all those kids vaccinated as quickly as possible. Oh, look, they're all different ones. So there's only a very small number closing before Christmas. South Bank's not. I believe Boondall's winding down. Yes. I think it may be closing before Christmas. Yes. But we've got alternate sites. So there's Brighton, there's Kipring, there's many sites around, and we'll have pop-up clinics. So remember, we're going to have pop-up clinics in shopping centres. So Christmas, busy, lots of people out buying prezzies for loved ones, having a coffee, catching up with friends. What better place? It's right there, it's convenient. We'll be in the shopping centres. But please, there are pharmacies everywhere you go. Our pharmacies have Pfizer, Moderna and AstraZeneca. Your GPs have access to all of these vaccines as well. So there is more than enough vaccine and there is more than enough access to the vaccine at any one of these places over Christmas. So there's no excuse not to continue to come out and get vaccinated. And now you know that come 1 January you'll quarantine for a shorter period of time if you're fully vaccinated. There's even more incentive to get on with it and get those 2 jabs.
That's on Minister Furner.
Yep.
In the future, do you think there should be changes made to ensure that these things don't happen again?
Well, again, we'll look at how all this occurred and the arrangements. But again, we don't do police checks on every single person who's involved in these events. I'm sure that the organisers of this event, in which there was about 40 stakeholders, including mayors and I think the Farmers Federation were there. There was a whole lot of stakeholders there. I'm sure that they will go away, the organisers of this event, and look at how do we make sure, we try to avoid these things as much as possible. You can only avoid these things so much.
Just
So-
wanted to open if we can. I've just got a testing question for people interstate. Can tourists from non-hotspot areas, say Tasmania, who are holidaying on the Gold Coast, do day trips into northern New South Wales? And will they be able to use a border exemption, or will they have to undergo a PCR test?
I'll take it in steps. People coming from Tasmania or any other jurisdiction that isn't a hotspot can come into Queensland without a PCR test. They are very welcome to come in, and we look forward to them arriving. If they then arrive in Queensland and they're going from Queensland into the border zone, look, we won't differentiate between Queenslanders or someone else who is in the border zone already going across the New South Wales border zone and coming back. That's
So
fine.
no test required.
No test required. Not if they're in the border. If they go further south and go back out, yes.
they'll have to be fully vaccinated.
Yeah.
Minister, did you see Nathan Lyon got his 400 test ticket this morning?
I didn't, but thank you
Thank
for that.
you.
What a
The
great way.
feed's gone down and England's middle
what-
order's gone down and no one can watch.
What is a great way to end a press conference. But look, anyone moving into the border zone from Queensland, whether they're an interstate visitor or not, just have to comply with the same rules as everyone else. They'll need a border pass to come back over the border. They need to be fully vaccinated, but they won't need a PCR test if they're staying in the border zone. Thanks, everyone.
What's the score?
No, well, Channel 7's feed's gone